So I want to talk about testing tonight. And I haven't really thought about what I'm going to talk about. I just know that there's a lot of stuff to talk about with testing. I have all my tests that I've taken. I've taken, with Sifu Brown alone, nine tests. And it seems like it's been way more than that, but we'll just say 9. And one of my tests was simultaneously incredibly easy and incredibly hard. It was so hard, in fact, that I didn't even know that I had taken the test. So, like you guys, I started off as a beginner. And I was one of the very first people who actually took a white sash test. Before me, Sifu Brown would just test you for yellow. You'd be there for almost a year and show up to class and you're just like, am I getting it? I don't know. And then one day he would say, okay, here's your yellow sash test. And it's coming up here. But Sifu Brown would run into a situation where some people would show up for yellow sash not looking very good. And so he did the white sash test as like a preparation for it. And I was still back in the day, the old school white sash tests where we weren't told in advance. Sifu would just see who was there tonight, see who looked good, and pull you in and say, you're testing right now, let's go. And it was, I would say that it was like stressful the first time it happened, but it wasn't, because I was like waiting for it. Every time I was in class, I was just waiting to get tested. And I was like so kind of in that place of, how come she's testing and I'm not? And I've been here longer than that person who just tested, and what's the deal? And believe it or not, when I first tested, I was not actually like the best person in the dojo, and I wasn't the best person for my rank. There were people who were there for as long as me or like less time who were better than me. So they tested before me. And I was just like, not like Sifu Brown's playing favorites and so on and so forth. Anyways, I took my test and same testing scheme as you guys. White sash, second degree white, yellow. I remember my yellow sash test was really hard. The hardest part of yellow sash test was it was the first test that I wore the testing jacket, and I like rolled it up, which is a smart idea, except I rolled it up right to my elbow. And so the first 2 techniques are great, and then I get to hook punches and I'm like, my arm's not bending. And I couldn't like figure it out in the test, and it was really rough for me. So that was like a surprise. And I was so trying to be impressive, and like I kind of think that I did a great job. And I'm not being sarcastic. I mean, this is good, and I would love to see somebody else try to do this. But I was throwing every technique as hard as I possibly could, and I was like key-eyeing on every technique. And I had no idea what other people were doing in that test. They were probably looking at me like, what's he trying to prove? I was 17, 18 years old. And I was dead at the end of that test. I had nothing left. They had to mop me up and wring me out into my uniform. And then second degree yellow sash was so much harder than first degree yellow, because now you're doing throws and block and counter and forms, and it's like, that's the first time you realize the worst word in the English language is the word again. When Sifu says the word again, because you do the form and you're throwing it hard, and then you get through the end and you're like, oh, thank God that's over. And then he says again, and you're like, okay. And that was for second degree yellow, which has just had 1 form that we had to do. And yellow, second degree yellow was around the time when it was like starting to get pretty challenging, but then green sash was the first one that I really remember like not being sure that I was gonna pass the test, being really challenged. And this is a big part of what I want to talk about tonight, is the purpose of the test. it is not to get the next rank. That's a byproduct. We would have tests even if there was no more rank, or at least I would make you do the torturous, grueling things that we do in tests, even if we didn't have rank. Because it is a necessary part of your practice to run up against that wall and feel like this is it. I can't do any more. I'm about to faint. I'm about to throw up. I'm about to die. And I've had all of those thoughts and more during tests. And Green Sash was the first one where I remember right around when we were doing second form for like the 10th time. And I had already done combinations and Sifu's combinations and the other forms. And I was thinking to myself, we still have to do chin-ah, and we still have to do blocking counter, and we still have to spar. And this is the end of me. I'm not going to make it. And then that was my first opportunity to have those thoughts and to let them go. And to say to myself, and this is one of the things that you learn in martial arts, you can learn it from listening to me right now, or you can learn it in the test, but you will learn this. The only way you make it through is by not focusing on how far you are and what's next and the results of what you're doing, but to focus on the work, to focus on what it is that you're doing now. And I use this analogy all the time in class, but like this is how you get through life, and this is how you deal with being overwhelmed in any situation, is you stop focusing on the whole thing and think about all the stuff that's left to do and all of the stuff that you haven't done and can't do, and focus on the thing that you are doing right now. Focus on what is the work that I can take care of and just put my head down and go. And so I was just, okay, I got to do one more form. That's it. He said again. I finished that. He says again. I said, okay, I got to do one more form. That's it. And it's like if you're doing push-ups and in your mind you think to yourself, I can do 50 push-ups. That's it. One more push. I use the number 50 because that's how many I can do. For you guys, I should say, I can do 10 push-ups. That's it. I can't do one more push-up. That's it. But then you get to 10, and it's like I'm counting in class, and I never count to 10 and then start again and then only count one more time. I count for 10 more, and you guys know this. So I start counting again, and you think to yourself, oh, we're going to do 10 more? Are you serious? And you stop. And somewhere in your mind, you give up. But if it were just one more, you could do one more push-up. You can always do one more push-up. And that's the trick, is to focus on the one more that you're doing right now. So that is a great opportunity that happens in testing, the more advanced tests. We had a white sash test tonight, which was, I'm sure, challenging. And yet, by the time you get to the more advanced tests, you're going to think, was there even a white sash test? What was that like pop quiz that we did that one night? So the test will find a way to challenge you, no matter who you are. And then second green was one that sticks out in my mind. And I can't remember if this was in my second degree green sash test or if it was a different one, but I remember Miss Malloy testing. And she was doing, I think it was Miss Malloy, doing Uncle Willie's planks for some ungodly amount of time. It was like 5 minutes straight or something. And I was like, this lady should not be able to do that. She was like, I'm not going to say how old she is. She was a woman of a certain age. And I would struggle doing a plank for 5 minutes now. So I know it was tough for her. But it is the kind of just like steel concentration and no nonsense. I'm not letting anything get in here and mess with me type of just focus that the test brings out of you. And I remember at the end of that test thinking, that was incredible. I'm surprised that these other people made it. I knew I could make it, but I'm surprised these other people made it. and then red sash test. Now, at the green sash test, you meditate. It's the first test that you meditate for, and it's an hour. You cannot move, and that is very, very difficult. And I suggest to you guys that you start meditating now and not move, because that's not something you can cram for. You can't just like meditate off and on and sometimes move and sometimes not, and then take the test. You will fail, absolutely. So first few tests for meditation I got through, it wasn't that bad because I had practiced that length of meditation plus then some, so I felt pretty good about it. And the red sash test, it's 2 hours of meditation, no movement. And I had done that before. I had done it at home. And this was a phase in my life that I'm going to call the beanbag phase, where I had a big beanbag chair that I would meditate on. And I would sit in Seiza, and it was very comfortable. It felt like I was just sitting in a cloud, except the night of the red sash test meditation, where my knees started to settle. And they were like just barely inching out, and it got to the point where my hips like needed to pop. You know this feeling where you need to pop something, and as soon as it pops, you feel great, and until it pops, it's terrible. Well, you're not allowed to move in meditation, so my hips stayed in that unpopped position, and it was so painful for me that I was sure I was going to vomit. I was so certain that I was going to throw up from the pain and fail the test. And by some miracle, I just sat there through it. And let me tell you, there was no meditation happening. It was just sitting in pain. And this is not how I recommend that you meditate. Now, Sifu Brown has said, if you're able to get through a long meditation without moving, he's fine with it if you meditated and you got really deep and you just got, you let the senses go and you take the consciousness within and you're just there, very calm and peaceful. And he's also fine if you just gut it out and it's like pure will, because either way you're really doing something. And that was what that test was for me. That was just pure will. It was awful. And Sifu Brown walked in and stopped us at the end of the meditation, and I just threw myself off the beanbag chair, and I was like writhing in pain on the ground. And he comes around and he asks everybody, "How's your meditation?" "Good, sir." "How's your meditation?" "Nice, sir." "How's your meditation?" It was the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life, Sifu. It was terrible. He says, "Really?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he sees me just curled up in a ball on the ground, and he moves on to the next person. But that was rough. And that's one of the unique things about our tests, besides the fact that our tests are in general very difficult on a physical level and on a mental level. There is this meditation component that the vast majority, I wouldn't even say the vast majority, it's some infinitesimal amount of people and tests. What's going on? Are we out of batteries here? It's happening? So it's a very, very small number of martial arts schools, immeasurably small, actually like test on meditation and have that as part of the test. So it's one of the things that I'm the most proud of that we do, and that makes what we do here so special and so unique and so important, because it is truly a sign that you're getting something beyond just the physical, the punching and kicking. And some people can even write a pretty decent paper and convince me that they're getting a lot in their life out of it. But if you can sit still and meditate for a real long time, that means that you've done something, you've transformed yourself. So, and that red sash test was physically incredibly grueling too. It was 7 hours long, and I was practicing with some people who had like injuries, like back injuries, and some people who were incredibly sick. One person, my good friend Michael Anuzis, who I practiced with for years and years, he and I got to take the red sash test together, which was awesome. And he was just like had a terrible head cold, and he was just snotting. And at one point, we're grappling as part of the test, and he just like snot all over me. And that was not even close to the worst part of the test. People were in the bathroom, like vomiting repeatedly outside. And that school, yeah, it's like our doors, just people just leaning out, throw up, come right back, get right back to it, and just terrible. And then was my next test, the second degree red sash test. The second degree red sash test, this is something that has only happened for a very small number of people. But I was on retreat one year, and Sifu Brown brought me over and he sat me down next to him and he talked to me and he said, "You're going to be taking the black sash test soon. And well, not soon, but there's a black sash test in your future. And I know that you're only a first degree red sash, but in my mind, now you are a second degree red sash." So he says, so you're second degree red sash and you're gonna be taking the black sash test with these other people who are already second degree red sashes. And I didn't really get it when he said it. I was like, okay, I'm taking the black sash test. And I was, very respectful and I got it. And he had already told me that I was going to be taking a black sash test. I just thought that I was at some point going to take the second degree red sash test, or that I was like skipping it or whatever. And I didn't get it in the moment that that was the test. That was it. And I didn't get it to the point of one time I was in class lining up, and there were some first degree red sashes who were lined up in front of me, and Sifu Brown looked at me and he looked at them and he was like, and we just started class. And I finally got it. I was like, oh, I'm a second degree red sash now. And that's an interesting thing, to not have an actual like physical test and to just like be the next rank, and to not, first of all, I actually really like taking the tests. As terrible as they sound, it's fun for me. I'm a little bit of a masochist, but it's like I love being able to test myself. And then there are the other students, because the other students who tested with black and all of the other students who have ever tested for black have taken the second degree red sash test. And one of them even said, when Sifu Brown called us in and told us that some of us were going to be taking the test, he kind of looked at me and he said, so is there no longer a second degree red sash test? He kind of like threw me under the bus. And Sifu Brown just ignored the question and kept going. But that's tough, to be in class like with your peers, and like they've had to go through this thing that now I didn't have to go through, and we're the same rank. And it's like a little bit of it is people are sitting there next to you thinking, why does he deserve this? And I'll just speculate why I deserved it. Because I spent considerably more hours on the mats teaching and practicing than the people who were higher ranked than me, just because I was there all the time. I was there all the time. I was a staff at the school, and I was teaching classes at our second school. And you shouldn't practice as much as I practiced, because it's not sustainable in life. It's not, unless you're becoming a martial arts teacher, unless you have nothing else to do and nowhere else to go, and like people don't really care about spending time with you. You can just be in the dojo all the time. And I would come to daytime classes and I would come to nighttime classes the same day, and I would come 5-6 days a week. And I'd drive back from college an hour plus multiple times a week and practice all night long, and go back and still somehow get really good grades. But that was a different time, a simpler time. The point is, and I'm not even going to talk about my black sash test. That's a whole other talk in and of itself. But all tests share a few common things. One is, unless you are a fool, you never really think that you're ready for the test that you're about to take. And I've had this conversation with many people, many people. Sharon, you thought you were the only one. No. Everyone is like, what? Are you sure it's already I'm supposed to test? And some of them trust me, and they know that if I say you're ready to test, then you're ready to test, but you're still thinking somewhere in your head, really? Am I really ready to take this test? Am I really supposed to be taking this test? And so that's one thing. You at least have that thought. Another thing that every test has is it's challenging, and it's an opportunity for you. It's an opportunity for you to grow, an opportunity for you to run up against these thoughts and these feelings of I can't. And for some of you, like Kaya, it's like most of it is before the test itself. And for a lot of you, it's during the test. You're like, what did I get myself into? Why am I here? Somebody call a doctor. And it is at this point that we have the opportunity for growth. Growth does not happen when things are easy. Growth does not happen when things are handed to us. Growth does not happen when things are expected, when things go the way that we think that they're going to go. Growth happens when we have something to break through. You're like a dandelion trying to grow through the crack in the sidewalk, and it really takes something. So if you take a test, or you're told that there's going to be a test, and you have these thoughts, great. Well, now you know that you're supposed to have those thoughts. And if you're in the test and you have this experience of I can't do it, great. Recognize that that's exactly what's supposed to happen. If it doesn't happen, you need to ask yourself why. And the answer you will probably come up with is, I didn't try hard enough. And there was one test that I took, besides the second degree red sash test. There's one test that I took, and I forget if it was yellow or I think it was second degree yellow, where Miss Donahue asked me at the end of it, she said, or it was like a couple days after, she said, how was that test? And I said, I'm kind of disappointed in myself. I think I could have done better. And, I had a memory of being in the test and it being really hard and me pushing myself and breaking through a couple of those walls, a few limitations, yet still having that thought of, I think I could have done better. And that's also normal. And some of you might never have that thought because at the end of the test you're just dead. And some of you might catch like your second or third wind, and you're like this for the first part of the test, and then you're like this for most of the rest of the test, and then you get towards the end and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, where did this come from? And you'll get this, I don't know where it comes from. It's like magic. I don't know. It's magic dojo dust that gets sprinkled on you. It's sweat. And that's magic dojo dust. And you just like, there's something more. It's like this analogy that I use of the toothpaste tube, where you can like roll it up and get as much of it out as you can, and then at the end, in order to get that last little bit out, you have to just like smash it hard with your thumb, as hard as you can. And there's a little bit left. And you're like, oh, where'd that toothpaste come from? It was hiding from me all those months. So you might have that experience towards the end of the test, thinking, actually, I got more. Can we go a couple more rounds, Sifu? And I'm like, shut up. Everyone else is about to get taken out on a stretcher. And it's all good. It's all right. So whatever your experience is, if you're taking a test with me, I promise you, it will be the right experience. I will put you through what there is for you to go through, and you will get something out of it. It might be this realization of, if I can do this, now I can do anything else, because it doesn't seem as hard. It might be a realization of what you're really capable of. It might be a realization of, everything that goes on in this dojo is real when you're sitting in Uncle Willie's for 5 minutes. But some kind of a realization, if you're there for it. So when you take the next test, or when I tell you that there's a test coming, and you have those thoughts, great, like have them. And when you're in the test and you're about to die, great, die, come back to life and keep going, because that's part of the whole point, the whole experience. So testing and meditation are similar, because if you are really pushing yourself in your meditation, I was having a conversation with a friend last night actually about this. He's saying, I got up to 10 minutes a day, and I do it every day, and I feel good about it. And now when I try to do 15 minutes, that last 5 minutes is just impossible. I can't do it. And I say, great, keep going for 15 minutes, and then someday that 15 minutes is going to seem as easy as the 10 minutes. But there's always some opportunity for growth and somewhere to go with it. So tonight when you sit, you may have been sitting for long enough and consistently enough that the 15-minute, 20 minutes that we do tonight is not that bad. And for some of you, it might seem like impossible. Like, I can't sit still for 2 more seconds. And that's great. Sit. And then you'll very often get back down deep and get that second wind of, hey, I could actually do this for another 10 minutes, I think. Wherever you are with your meditation, just sit still and don't move. Sit comfortably.